Welcome back to Second and Short. It is December 16th, and this is a Friday episode. This is the first of its kind. And I got a special friend who's going to be joining me every week, and that is Mr. Luke Morozic.
Yes,
Luke, why don't you
sir.
introduce yourself?
What's up, guys? I am so happy to be on here. So glad that Grayson invited me. This is so exciting. So exciting.
Anything you want to let the people know about you, Luke? Anything in particular?
For sure. I am a journalism major at UGA, Spanish minor. The goal is to be a Spanish-speaking sports journalist. I'm into the NFL and soccer are probably my two main things, but I can kind of talk about anything. I am a degenerate Steelers fan.
That's the best kind of sports fans.
For some.
100%.
For some.
And I know you didn't want to say it, but you are a Yankees fan, and I have to bring that up.
Yeah, so I don't like to tell people that I am a Yankees fan on top of being a Steelers fan, because obviously that kind of gets a bad rap. But I just grew up watching A-Rod, and I clinged on to him. Of course, not anymore, after everything has happened with him. But I am also a huge Yankees fan as well.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into this Week 15 preview for the NFL.
Let's do it.
It's going to start out Miami Dolphins going to Buffalo. Buffalo is a 7-point favorite, and they've got the over/under at 44 points. What's your first glance at this game? What are you thinking?
So this is a huge playoff game for the Dolphins. Sunday Night Football, it's prime time. You're going into Buffalo in the snowy-ass weather, and you have a chance to prove everybody, not only your division rivals, but the whole NFL, that the Florida boys can play in the damn snow, and they can also be a playoff contender because, a lot of people, and I feel like majority of people are saying that AFC, in the Super Bowl will be the Buffalo Bills. Well, I feel like the Dolphins have a good chance to maybe, put a hole in that argument maybe this game.
Yeah, I think that the Dolphins have a great shot at winning this game. I think what stands in front of them is going to make it really tough. And we saw this matchup in Week 3. Dolphins took it 21-19. But I think these teams have definitely changed over those weeks. Trades have happened. Just in general, the rosters have moved around a little bit, but Josh Allen really had his way against this defense. They just couldn't finish in the red zone in that Week 3 matchup. Bills are in a great position. The only thing holding them back is the run game. James Cook has been okay, and there's some missing pieces there, but they have a great defense. They've obviously got the quarterback and the receivers. But throughout this season, Josh Allen has been their primary source of rushing, and I think that puts you in a tough position. So I don't think that the Bills can really have a big impact on the playoffs without a running back. I know that this team is amazing, and they've got stars at every position, but you run the risk of losing your entire offense because you want the quarterback to run the ball.
I agree. I will say this, though, about this game. It's very interesting because the Dolphins have lost their two starting quarterbacks earlier in the season, and they're without the two guys that replaced them against the Bills on Sunday Night Football. So I agree with your argument that for the future, they will definitely need a running back because they haven't had one in what feels like forever. But I think Josh Allen could probably go for 400 yards tonight. Or not tonight, but on Sunday night. Because
he did.
They're without their two starting
quarterbacks.
Yeah, and he did the same thing in Week 3, and they're without even more players. So the Dolphins, they might have to get some sort of pass rush going on because the secondary will get lit up in this game, and they're just going to have to keep up offensively and have a pass rush.
Yeah, and then for Miami, I think the glaring problem in the last couple of weeks is that Tua just has not been very good, and there's no way to sugarcoat it. He's 28 for 62 on his passes in the last two games. That's a 45% completion percentage. That's about 20% less than league average this season. So if Tua can start throwing a good ball or maybe just taking a little bit higher percentage passing options, then I think that the Dolphins could be more successful. but he's putting them in bad situations. And then like another thing where it's just more proof that he's just not playing to where he should be right now. In the last 2 games, he's averaging a 22.2 QBR. He's still second in QBR this season after those 2 performances.
Wow.
But that 22.2 over a full season would be worse than any of the 31 qualified quarterbacks this season in QBR.
Wow. That's a pretty good stat. And he's going into rival territory on top of it being frigid. And usually in the cold, I feel like you kind of like to run the ball because receivers' hands are going to be cold and numb. Quarterbacks' hands are going to be cold and numb. So, I don't know. Tua, it's weird for the Dolphins because they're 8-5, but they spent so much money on their running back core this season. Chase Edmonds is now hurt, and I'm pretty sure they traded for Jeff Wilson Jr. And none of them, I don't know, the Dolphins don't have a run game either to take the pressure off Tua Tagovailoa, which you could also argue that maybe, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Mike Gesicki, we have not seen a lot of Mike Gesicki. I'm not too sure why Mike McDaniels doesn't really like Mike Gesicki this year because he's talented in his own right, but they just haven't been finding a good way to make the passing game work with the bad run game, in my opinion.
Yeah. They have, a couple of talented running backs. Jeff Wilson Jr. looked really good in those first couple of games in San Fran this year. He comes over to the Dolphins. He hasn't had a huge impact, but he's still there. And then Raheem Mostert, a guy that they spent some money on in the offseason, doesn't look any better. And I just think that with Tua is a little cold right now, and then with the running backs not really getting the carries they should, it's just a recipe for disaster for the rest of the season for the Dolphins.
I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more with that.
And then on top of it, they've lost the last 2, and those 2 losses come off the back of one of the easiest 5-game stretches I've seen, which I believe it started in Pittsburgh, unfortunately.
Yeah, RIP.
But, it went Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Houston, and then they just hit a brick wall in San Fran. And then once again against LA. And this is their 3rd week straight on the road. I got a feeling another loss is coming for the Dolphins.
I couldn't agree more, but man, would it shake up that division if they were able to pull something off? I mean, really. But like you said, there really isn't anything positive to go off of for the Dolphins to win in Buffalo. In their last 5, 3 teams that they've beaten are teams that have completely struggled. Chicago has been able to put up points against people, but they're a struggling team. Of course, the Dolphins should win that game. Same thing with Cleveland, and same thing with Houston. Now, San Francisco, that defense, with the Dolphins' offense in their receiving game, maybe you would expect more than 17 points against San Francisco, but that's still a really good defense. And the Chargers, I feel like that's a game that, if the Dolphins expect to be in the playoffs this year, that's a game that you just got to come out on top of.
Yeah, and all the eyes are going to be on this Bills-Dolphins matchup. Saturday Night Football, which is my favorite. I love a good Saturday Night Football game.
Me too.
But I can't see a world where the Dolphins can... I don't even know if they'll cover, honestly. I don't think that the Dolphins just have what it takes right now. Look, they want to go home. They want to be playing in Hard Rock. This is their 3rd week straight, like I just said, and I just think they're going to keep falling on their face. Is there anything else you got to say about this one?
I would like to see more of James Cook. That's really
Agreed.
The only thing. A little bit biased, with James Cook coming out of Georgia, but Devin Singletary isn't getting it done. I would like to see more of like a 50-50 because I think James Cook could carry his own weight on this team. I really do.
Yeah, I think he can be a great running back. I don't think that James Cook can be a primary source of offense. He seems to work better in a running back by committee setup. But give him a little more opportunities to get a ball in the flat. Maybe line him up as a receiver. He showed off how well he can play after the catch at Georgia, and it just seems like we haven't seen a lot of that while he's been in Buffalo.
I couldn't agree more. And one last thing to go off of this game that I wanted to talk about that I thought was kind of interesting is one more thing that does not that does not look good for the Dolphins in this situation is the fact that Buffalo, their last 2 wins were divisional wins, and I don't know. I like divisional wins no matter how bad the other team is or how good they are. I feel like it's always a tough game, and against the Jets and the Patriots, they have come out on top both times. So, yeah, the Dolphins are
Yeah, it's an important
probably screwed. Probably
yeah,
screwed.
it's an important thing to look at. If you can have success within your division, it's huge because those are the highest pressure games you're gonna have all season. It's the guys that you got to play twice a year, and most of the time they keep it close. If the Bills can just keep on rolling against divisional opponents, they'll have no problem. It's when they get out of the division that sometimes they struggle. But we'll move on to Lions Jets. This one's in New Jersey. Jets are a 1-point favorite, and I think that favorite only comes from them being the home team, because neither of these teams are much better than the other. And then the over/unders put at 44.5, and both of these teams, this is an important one for them. They're sneakily making a push for a playoff spot, and if you would have told me that last year, I wouldn't have believed you.
No.
But both of these teams are the second team out in their conferences right now, so there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What you have here are, I would probably go ahead and say, 2 of the most hungry football teams in the National Football League right now. I mean, I don't even have to say that about or have to describe or go into why the Lions are hungry. They have Dan Campbell, right? Dan Campbell is his name.
Yes,
He
he's
is,
trying to eat your kneecaps.
yeah. He is the most hungry head coach in the NFL right now. The most hungry head coach in the NFL right now, and I just feel like this could turn into a bloodbath really quick because you have a team that's sitting at 6-7. That's the Lions, and then the Jets are at 7-6. Both teams are on the cusp of making it to the playoffs, and God knows how long. I mean, I just feel like both of these organizations are super hungry because they have gone against the status quo this year, and both of them look good for the first time in God knows how long. I mean, the Lions have been bad forever, the Jets have been bad forever, but both of them look like they could be a playoff team right now, and they're playing against each other. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and then like after a very impressive win against the Jets for the Lions, they're primed for another good performance. I really do think so. But the offense has to keep up with the defense. If they give up as many yards as they did last week, the offense has to come prepared. It's as simple as that. Look, their defense can't get as lucky as last week because they gave up 223 yards to Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins had 425 yards in the air, and they still won that game. So it's just about being clutch in the high pressure situations. Look, you can let them march down the field as much as you want. If you stop them short of the end zone, you can win the game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree with that because you're having a Lions offense that looks unstoppable, even with Jared Goff at the helm, which I still can't really believe that. But hey, good for them. And then the Jets defense, they just have some dogs on the defense. They are some studs. So I could not be more excited for this game.
Yeah, and then the Jets are kind of in the opposite position of the Lions right now. They're coming off of or they're on a 2-game losing streak right now, and they have to win this game to make the playoffs at this point. It is an integral matchup in this season, and I don't know how it's going to go for the Jets. Mike White is still a little bit beat up from last week. He's going to most likely start even with the sore ribs. But I think that if Mike White doesn't come out hot, we'll probably see Flacco in the second quarter on.
I actually like that take. I completely agree, and that's actually one of the points that I wanted to talk about with you in my notes here. So I was kind of confused as to why they let Mike White come back into the game for a third time. And my opinion on that is if they let him come back in the game so many times, which I respect his toughness, by the way, but if he is the future quarterback moving forward, I don't know why you don't put in Flacco or even Zach Wilson to finish off the game. It's a must win against Buffalo last week. I understand that. But I don't know. It kind of felt like they were kind of using him a little bit. Or the vice versa of that is maybe they thought Mike White was better than Flacco or Zach Wilson. So I don't know. I'd like to get your thoughts on why they let him back in the game a third time or even a second time.
Well, I certainly think that the Jets do think that Mike White is better than Flacco and Wilson, even if he's a little bit banged up. But at that point, why risk the future of your season on one game?
Yeah.
Because if he would have gone out there and let's say he broke a couple ribs, then he's definitely getting sidelined for a week, let alone the rest of the regular season. So I think that came down to a decision-making thing. Do we know who made the decision? No, of course not. I don't think that Robert Salah would just throw a guy who doesn't want to go back in the game. I got a feeling Mike White had a lot to do with coming back in. Look, he's a fighter. He has waited his turn in the NFL, and he's got his opportunity, and he doesn't want to lose it. So I get why he probably wanted to come back in this game. It just, you can't jeopardize your health and safety for a win.
No. A part of me kind of wants to believe that it would have been different if it wasn't a divisional opponent and it wasn't such a close game.
Yeah, if it wasn't so close, obviously, whether he wanted to come back in or not, they probably would have made the decision to just let him be. But, close game, and if he's insisting that he comes back in the game, he's your starting quarterback. You got to listen to him.
Sure. Sure, I agree.
All right. Well, then we're going to move into Titans at Chargers. Chargers are favored by 3. Over-unders at 46.5. What's your first thought?
My first thought is that the Titans are on a 3-game losing streak, and they don't look very good right now. I mean, blown out by Philly. Also, not really blown out, but they also gave up 36 points to Jacksonville. Not a lot of teams have given up 36 points to Jacksonville. And they came off of a loss of Cincinnati as well. I don't know. The Titans, both of these teams are on the cusp right now, so it's going to be another dogfight like the game that we just covered. But I don't know. I think what we have here, the Chargers have a awful run defense this year. The Titans have Derrick Henry. That looks pretty good for him. The Titans have an awful pass defense. The Chargers have Herbert, who's a dog, Keenan Allen, who's a dog. They have that tight end Everett, who's kind of had a breakout season. He's a dog. And they have Mike Williams. That's another dog.
And Jordan Palmer. Can't even forget about him. He was filling the role the whole time that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were out, and he was doing fine. So, yeah, there's a ton of weapons on this team. And Herbert has looked amazing. He hasn't thrown an interception in 3 weeks. He's had at least 270 plus in his last 4 games, and he's got all of his weapons back. Like, this is an offense that should be feared. But yeah, you're right. There's question marks about this defense. And Derrick Henry can be the source of the offense for the Titans. He's done it before, but they can't be successful that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what it's going to come down to is for the Titans, it's going to come down to how long Derrick Henry can keep those weapons on offense for the Chargers off the field. But what you're going to want from the Titans is long drives that always end in a touchdown. Always end in a touchdown. And I think for the Titans defense, don't give up a big play and have a good red zone defense. That would be the keys for the Titans to win. But the Chargers the Titans defense is awful, and the Chargers have so many weapons on offense.
Yeah, and if let's say that Derrick Henry can't get it going, which we've seen a couple of times this season, there's no source of offense outside of him. Like, Ryan Tannehill's not going to come take over a game.
No, and neither is Malik Willis if they decide to bench Tannehill.
Yeah, so I feel like the Titans are riding on decent quarterback play and 200 yards from Derrick Henry if they want to keep up with a very high-skilled, high-potential Chargers offense.
Yeah, I agree fully with that.
You got anything else for this one? I know there's not too much to talk about here. Obviously, it's just a matchup game.
Derwin James is questionable, and I think that has a pretty significant deal in this one. Obviously, because Derwin James is Derwin James, but if the Titans have any shot at getting a pass game, I feel like it's Derwin James being out for this game.
But it's not like, the ball doesn't typically reach the safety with Ryan Tannehill.
That is true, but I don't know. He comes down and blows up some short passes sometimes, and he's pretty decent against the run as well.
He is. Yeah, he's a game changer. So if he doesn't play, this game could go very different. But even though he's questionable, if he's on the field, whether he's, not 100%, he still makes an impact, and it's something that the Titans are going to have to look out for.
100%. I agree.
All right, you ready to go on to Giants Commanders?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right, so the Giants going into Washington, they played 2 weeks ago. Washington is a 4.5-point favorite. Over-unders at 40.5. And my biggest surprise here is that the Commanders are kind of a large favorite in this matchup. I feel like these two teams align pretty well. Like the last time they played, they tied.
I agree that is actually interesting. I think a lot of it, though, it probably has to do with the Giants have just simply not been good anymore. Started the season really strong. They're not finishing it strong. The Commanders, literally the opposite. I think that has a lot to do with the Commanders being a favorite. And the last one ended in a tie between the two. I think the Commanders come out on top on this one for sure.
Yeah, and the only thing that is kind of standing in the way of me thinking that the Commanders can win this pretty handedly is that Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson are questionable.
Yes.
And that'll totally change the game because, yeah, you can put a game in Heineke's hands and he can make some big plays, but if you don't allow them to get the short yardage and move up the field, he's going to force himself into some bad throws.
Yeah. For sure. Heineke is not a standalone quarterback in the sense where he could kind of just carry an offense without wide receivers, without running backs. Luckily, he has wide receivers, but it's going to be tough for him. It's going to be tough. Granted, he is at home this time, which will help him out with play calling and stuff like that, so it may alleviate some of the pressure that, an away crowd would influence an offense, but I don't know. I still think the Commanders have it, even without the two running backs. I am betting on Saquon to be stopped again for another week because he has not been very good the past couple weeks.
Interesting, because I think it's the other way around. I think Saquon's going to have a good game because I think Brian Daboll is going to let this team know that it's time to put it in gear. And what we've seen from Brian Daboll as a coach so far this year is that he can get his guys to clutch up in the big situations. Like they haven't lost a lot of close games. A lot of their losses have been against the teams that, on paper they should have lost to. Like, let's see, they lost to the Cowboys, which they should have lost to. They lost to a Seahawks team that was really rolling, and then it's just the past couple of weeks where they've kind of stumbled. They lost to the Lions, who, have turned it around, and they look really good. Lost to a Cowboys again, lost to the Eagles again. Like, it's tough to see that, but they're losing the games that more than likely they should have. And I think that they could pull out the win.
I don't know. It's just, it's hard, but to your point, this would be the time to try to make a statement if you're the New York Giants. I mean, you've lost your last couple, and the last team you beat was Houston. It was Houston. So I don't know. It's looking rough for the Giants in the playoff picture if they keep slipping. But as I said before, you're away. It's going to be cold. It's division rivalry. I'm pretty sure it's Sunday Night Football as well. So I would like to see the Giants come out on top. I just don't think that they will.
Fair enough. Well, I do want to get into a little bit of the playoff picture. We're getting into Week 15. There's only 4 weeks of football left before the postseason, and there's a lot of teams that have got a chance to make it in. So right now, the only team that's clinched is the Eagles. They've easily clinched, but on the NFC side, there's a little bit of separation when it comes to um, the number 4 team, which is the Buccaneers, because they'll most likely win the NFC South. We'll see how that goes. That division's a clusterfuck, but the Vikings, 49ers, they're probably going to lock it up. The Cowboys will probably make it, but those last 2 spots are held by Washington and New York. And, whoever wins this game might solidify their spot, and the loser's really going to have to fight.
Yeah, because they have the Seahawks, who are hungry, and the Lions, who are hungry, behind them. So
yeah, and then you have a Packers team that I really don't think you can count out. I know they've been very bad this year, but it's still Aaron Rodgers. It's still Aaron Jones. Like, they have guys that can make a difference in a game, and I trust Matt LaFleur as a coach. I know he hasn't come up very clutch in the postseason, but this is a Packers team that, other than losing Devontae Adams, they haven't changed much, and they still have guys. It's just about performance. And, maybe they've lost it. Maybe Rodgers is done. Maybe the locker room has just given up. But I feel like they've still got the talent to make a push.
I couldn't agree more. They have a lot of good young wide receivers, and I'm a big fan of Allen Lazard. I thought he was going to receive over 1,000 yards this year. That was one of my bold hot takes for him, was that he would be crazy this year because it was his turn to step up. But it doesn't really look like that's happened. Packers are one of those teams, man. Like you said, you can never count out Aaron Rodgers or Matt LaFleur. I mean, he's struggled in the postseason, yes, but he is still a really, really good head coach. Those organizations where if they're in the playoffs, there's a different edge to them being in the playoffs. Kind of like seeing the Cowboys or the Steelers in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the Packers, their schedule going forward isn't extremely difficult. They've got the Rams this week, which you would think that it's a lock for the Packers to win, but the Rams are a complete wild card after what we saw last Thursday. Their team is like 100% different from the beginning of the season. And then the Packers face Miami, and then they've got 2 divisional games to finish it out in Minnesota, against Minnesota and against the Lions. And look, they've got a fighting chance in all of these games, but I think it all lies in the hands of this week's game. If they can look super impressive and just whip the hell out of the Rams, I think that people are going to give them a little bit more of a chance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's a good week for the Packers because, like you said, the Rams are they're 4-9 and they're still trying to figure things out for the rest of the season. So, they did have the crazy Thursday night win with Baker Mayfield's awesome drive, but I would still consider them a team in shambles, and the Packers could capitalize on that.
Yeah, and all that the Packers need is momentum. Look, they started off 4-1, and then they lost 5 straight, but then miraculously pull out a huge win against the Cowboys, and then fall right back down on their face. Like, it doesn't make sense to me how this Packers team has gone throughout this season, but I still believe in them for some dumb reason.
It's because of that bad man, at number 12. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, he has been awful this year, especially that damn interception that he threw to Aiden Hutchinson. That was horrible. I mean, when the hell do you see, for one, Aaron Rodgers throw picks, 2 to a D lineman? I mean, that's Ben Roethlisberger's job. I couldn't believe that game. And to me, that kind of sealed the deal for this era of the Packers. But at the same time, like you said, I just can't count them out. And I think it's because of the era that we grew up in and watching 12 play.
Yeah, it is. And, Aaron Rodgers hasn't really failed anybody in his career. Obviously, he's only got 1 Super Bowl. Oh, no. Guess what? You listening right now, you don't have a Super Bowl. So don't sit here and say that Aaron Rodgers is bad and Aaron Rodgers doesn't win, guess what? He's got a million more NFL wins than you do.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
I do want to talk about a little bit more about the NFC South, because the NFC South might have the most crazy ending of any division this year.
I agree.
The Panthers and the Falcons are only one game behind the Bucks, and they both have relatively easy matchups this week. The Panthers are taking on the Steelers. Falcons taking on the Saints. Of course, the Falcons-Saints is always going to be a close one, but I think with how the Saints have been playing, the Falcons should take it. But both of them have the chance to win this week, and then the Buccaneers are walking straight into a sure defeat. Honestly, I'll say it. The Bengals are going to whip the hell out of the Buccaneers. So there's a chance that after this week, they're all locked up at 6-8 for the lead in the NFC South.
Yeah, I agree, and I think if you're a Falcons fan, you're still kicking yourself over that Chargers loss, because if I remember correctly, Thursday Night Football, Tom Brady got his ass kicked by the Ravens in Tampa on Thursday Night Football. And the Sunday after that, the Falcons looked like they were going to beat the Chargers, but then you have Khalil Mack literally taking the ball away from Drake London. Didn't really even cause a fumble, just took the ball away from him like near the goal line. And then I'm pretty sure you had a fumble recovery that was fumbled again and then recovered by the Chargers. And for me, that kind of changed that whole division and made it a lot closer than it should have been. The Falcons, in my opinion, really do not look that bad this year at all, but they've lost 2 straight.
They don't. And Desmond Ritter's starting the game this week. Mariota's going to be out. Looks like he's getting surgery, and there's been a little bit of drama within the locker room with him getting benched. But I think the Falcons will have kind of a new energy coming into next week. They're coming off the bye. They've got a brand new starting quarterback. Things are going to look a little bit different this week. They might come off to a slow start, but it's a good game to start off a hot streak against the Saints, because the Saints suck.
Yeah, I think you could look at it 2 ways. Maybe you don't want your rookie quarterback's first game to be against your arch enemies, but also at the same time, what a statement to the rest of the league it would be if he showed up. And on top of that, like you just pointed out, they're coming off of a bye week, so he's had extra time to prepare, which a lot of rookies, sometimes they're not really given that time. So Desmond Ridder, he's really been given the tools to make a good appearance here. It's just, and for your first game to be against the Saints as a Falcons quarterback, that's a big moment that you're just going to have to show up. And I mean, you're 5-8, the team you're playing is 4-9. Both of you guys have a chance to potentially win the division. Who knows? And yeah, I don't know. It could be tough.
Yep. And then, after the Falcons and Panthers in the NFC, the only other 3 teams in contention for a playoff spot are the Cardinals, which it's just not going to happen. The Saints, who I don't think it's going to happen, but who knows? Like I said, the NFC South is anybody's. And then the Rams, who I believe after this week will probably be eliminated. But we'll move over to the AFC, where things are pretty interesting. There's a lot of close, like a 3-way tie by records for the 7th spot. There's a lot going on. So it starts off Bills 1, Chiefs 2. They're both 10-3. The Ravens are number 3 at 9-4. I got a feeling that the Bengals will end up jumping the Ravens in the AFC North, and the Bengals will end up winning that division, taking the 3 seed. I kind of think that with Lamar's injury, the Ravens might still drop out of the playoffs, even with 9 wins.
Wow, that's a pretty hot take. It's definitely possible. I mean, the Patriots are creeping up, the Chargers are creeping up, and the Jets are creeping up. So I could see it. With Lamar being hurt, it might ruin their mojo a little bit for sure. But we're coming off of a pretty questionable win against the Steelers, I will say. But hey, a win against the Steelers is always a win, and I know Baltimore will take that every single time. But yeah, I mean, who knows? The Ravens could always drop for sure.
Yeah, and then the 4 seed Tennessee we've obviously talked about how we both think they're going to lose this game, but the schedule doesn't look great for them to finish off the season. Obviously, there's always a good chance that they're going to win that division, because it is a very weak division, but they haven't looked very good. Like that, we've obviously talked about it. Derrick Henry's been struggling here and there. The offense has just absolutely nothing in the passing game, and they're going to have to finish off their season. Chargers, Texans, Cowboys, Jags, and those Cowboys in the Cowboys game and the Jags game is going to be huge for their season, because I got a feeling the Cowboys might just kick the hell out of them, and the Jags look really good.
Yeah, the Jags are they're coming off of that awesome win against the Titans. I don't know. The Cowboys just need to not fall into the trap game. I feel like that, like they usually do, but who knows? Jacksonville is really hot right now, and the Cowboys always tend to kind of mess up against the below 500 teams that are looking hot. So I don't know. That'll be a we'll have to see game, I think. Sure.
Yeah, and so the Titans will probably end up winning the AFC South and taking that fourth spot, just because I don't see the Jags fully turning it around and making it in. And then obviously Colts aren't going to do it, and the Texans already eliminated. But after the Titans, you've got the Bengals, like we said. I got a feeling they'll move up into the 3, but we could see a Ravens team that maybe has a little bit of fight in them could finish off the season well. So the Bengals will definitely make it. I said it a couple weeks ago. I've got the Bengals making the Super Bowl, and I still believe it. They're winning games that they should win, and they're winning the games that they need to win, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean they're 5 straight right now. They're looking fantastic. I don't know. I don't know about Super Bowl though, and I feel like that's only because within their 4 losses, they've had some losses in there that are just bad losses in my opinion. Just with a team their caliber, they shouldn't be losing. And if they don't jump Baltimore and they still make the playoffs, I feel like for the Bengals it'll come down to whether the game's home or away. To give them that extra boost that they need for maybe some of like the trap kind of playoff games. I don't know. I think it's between just kind of basic the Chiefs and the Bills. I just think they're too good to be stopped right now. Even though the Bengals did get a win over the Chiefs and Joe Burrow hasn't lost against the Chiefs, I feel like come playoff time it'll be time for Patrick Mahomes to step up, and he will. If it's down to the Bengals and the Chiefs.
I don't know. I don't think that the Chiefs have. It's crazy to say I don't think they have the offense.
Okay.
It sounds ridiculous, but yeah, you've got Pat Mahomes and you've got Travis Kelce. Juju hasn't done shit. Isaiah Pacheco isn't an amazing running back. He does his job pretty well, but he's not a game changer. And then just kind of across the board on that offense, your only playmakers are Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce. And there's not a lot of teams with just a quarterback and a tight end that are going to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree. It's just they're 10-3, man. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, obviously we have not seen the Chiefs in the playoffs without Tyreek Hill, at least in the recent future or the recent past. And yeah, and I don't. It's just tough to say. Because I agree with you. They're a 10-3 team, but their offense is really, really shaky. They don't really have a running back. Jerick McKinnon, he's a good pass playmaker, but they don't have a true running back to alleviate the pressure off of Patrick Mahomes and, less targets to throw to than last season. But they've only lost 3 games. So I still take the Chiefs, I think, out of the AFC. At least the Chiefs or the Bills, for sure.
Yeah, I get that. And then I do have a gripe with the Bills. Me and Brock talk about it a lot. You got to run the ball to be successful, and the Bills just can't run the ball right now. Outside of Josh Allen, they have no source of running. So if you want to get yourself into the situation where you can pass the ball to be successful, you got to set it up with the run. And I just don't think they do that well enough. I think that the Bengals have the most well-rounded offense probably in the NFL outside of maybe the Eagles. The Bengals have a bona fide superstar quarterback, Joe Burrow. He can throw the ball as good as anybody, and he can run. You got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got Tyler Boyd. Like, there's some serious playmaking ability on this offense, and I didn't even talk about the run game. Joe Mixon is a phenomenal running back, and Samaje Perine is a surprisingly good second string running back. He's very, very useful in the passing game. You can hit him on those little drop routes. Like, I think the Bengals sneakily have the best offense in the AFC.
On paper, I would agree with you, but not how they actually play. I feel like there are just some games where they just don't click correctly. And the Steelers have exposed Burrow a couple of times they've played them, and a lot of people don't think the Steelers are that good, but I don't know. Burrow definitely has potential to struggle, and when he struggles, I think he completely brings the team down with him. But yeah, they're loaded, completely loaded. They have an awesome quarterback, awesome wide receivers, and like you said, Perine, he stepped it up whenever he played the Steelers. Trust me, I know. So they have a formidable, second string back, and obviously Joe Mixon can carry the load on his own. It's just whether or not he gets tired, really. So I think on paper, yes, the Bengals do have a pretty well-rounded offense, probably the best in the AFC, but I just cannot see them making it to the game, man.
Well, we'll have to see. Next team we'll talk about, Miami Dolphins, sitting there at the 6th spot. I do think they'll end up making it in unless the Jets or Chargers really shine in the remainder of this season. Dolphins obviously have a tough one this week, like we've talked about earlier. They're playing the Bills. I think they'll probably end up losing that one. It'll put them at 8-6. If the Chargers and the Jets pick up a win this week, they'll all be at 8-6. And that's not even talking about the number 7 team, the Patriots. The Patriots are playing the Raiders. That's another team that they look primed to beat. Belichick's got a good idea of what Josh McDaniel can do. So this 9-6 is very interesting in the AFC.
I couldn't agree more. The Patriots, let's see. They play the Raiders, Bengals, Dolphins, and Bills to finish out. Those last 3 are going to be really damn tough for them. I feel like after seeing this, the Dolphins will probably squeeze through, but who knows? I mean, Belichick is always he's a sneaky guy, and he's always a threat to play against. It's why he has statistically the worst quarterback in the league, and his team is over 500. Is because of Bill Belichick. So yeah, I could see them. I could see the Patriots sneaking in, but that is a super, super tough schedule.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough, especially with the Chargers and Jets on their heels. Yeah, after hearing that remaining schedule, I do think the Patriots will end up getting out. But yeah, it opens up a spot for the Chargers or Jets, and that's where the conversation comes: is who do you think is really going to make the difference in these last couple of games?
And this one's tough, and I think it's tough for you. And it's crazy to think that the Jets are actually last in their division right now, because they definitely do not play like it. I would like to see the Jets make it, but I feel like they have kind of set the tone for how the rest of their season will go. They're a very hungry team, but I don't think they're going to make it in the playoffs this year. I don't. I think it'll be the Chargers that take that 7 spot.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I do think the Chargers will make it. I think the Chargers have a little bit more of a complete team, especially when it comes to the offense. Obviously, we all know about what's going on with the Jets' offense, but with as many injuries and benchings and all of these problems going on with the Jets' offense, the fact that they're at 7-6 after they've been the laughingstock of the NFL since I can remember, so it is extremely impressive that they've even made it here.
I agree.
And so 7 wins for the Jets. If they lost the rest of the games this season, I think it's a win of a season for the
I
Jets.
completely agree. I mean, this team has been very impressive. If they even lost out for the rest of the season, yeah, it would be disappointing, but wow. I mean, they have been so much fun to watch. You know, you had Brees Hall when he was healthy, who was so much fun, and Sauce Gardner, who we will be hearing about his name forever. I think he is unstoppable. Sauce Gardner's awesome. But something interesting that I wanted to bring up with you about the Jets is actually their running back situation is kind of strange to me right now. Obviously, you had Brees Hall was I don't think he was the main guy originally. I want to say that it may have started with Michael Carter, but Brees Hall obviously later took over and he was awesome. Now that he's hurt, they traded for James Robinson, and at first I'm thinking, oh, they're fine. James Robinson is an awesome running back. They're seriously getting a good guy on top of Michael Carter, who's still there. Both of them have not been that great. And I feel like that's where we're seeing a lot of their struggles in recent games come up is because of those two running backs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. What I see with the Jets though is that they still have guys. This is a very deep roster, and it's kind of surprising to most because they've been so bad for the last couple of years. But it's really been up to drafts, and the draft picks they've made are amazing. You know, Zonovan Knight filled in last week, and he was the rookie of the week in the AFC. Like, they've got young guys on this team that can make a difference, and a couple of them are rookies. And I think that maybe this year isn't the year that they make the playoffs, but I think going forward that they're going to be a contender for years to come.
I couldn't agree more. And I actually forgot about the Knight guy, which is really surprising. He must have been showing off, big time in practice to take over the job from Michael Carter and James Robinson, who are, established running backs in the league. But yeah, he was very impressive.
Yeah, and like something crazy I saw earlier today with the Jets is that they have had so many AFC Rookie of the Weeks. Week 14, Zonovan Knight. Week 13, Garrett Wilson. Week 12, Garrett Wilson. Week 9, Sauce Gardner. Week 8, Garrett Wilson. Week 7, Sauce Gardner. Week 6, Brees Hall. Week 5, Sauce Gardner. Week 4, Brees Hall. And week 2, Garrett Wilson. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about their war room for that. Has that even ever been done before? That's got to be something.
There's no way unless like one guy won it every week. Like Justin Herbert in 2020 took it home in week 2, week 4, week 5, 7, 8, 9, and 11, and 15.
Okay.
So that's a very impressive one for a single player. But the fact that they've got Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Sauce Gardner, and Zonovan Knight, 4 different rookies in one season winning Rookie of the Weeks.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It is a huge testament to the front office of the Jets. They truly have. They haven't completed the rebuild, but it is obviously in its final stages.
100%. I would give them. I would actually go as far as say 2 years. I don't even think next year. Depending, of course, it depends on how their draft goes, but I would give them 1 more year after next year, and they'll be good.
I think they should draft a quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with that. That seems like the one thing that kind of holds them back a little bit.
Yeah, and this is a quarterback-heavy draft. Like, I've expressed my hatred for Will Levis multiple times, but he could. I think he's going to fall. I don't understand Todd McShay putting him in the top 10 in his mock draft that came out this week. I don't understand why Will Levis is all over the top 15 in these draft boards. But I think that, if the Jets have the opportunity to get Will Levis, go ahead and get him. Because it appears that, the people that might know a little more about me than football, or in football, they think that Will Levis is the guy. And if he's still available when the Jets pick comes around, probably in the 15 to 20 range, you got to hop on that.
I agree. And even if they draft Will Levis or any quarterback, they will be just another addition to kind of an already stacked quarterback room. Of course, none of the quarterbacks are standout, but Mike White he's decent. Joe Flacco's a Super Bowl champion, and Zach Wilson was a former, high draft pick. There's a lot to be said about Zach Wilson, but still, he was still up there. He's still got talent. So, I mean, any quarterback is going to, sit behind in that quarterback room, they're going to learn a lot, and they're going to be probably pretty well developed as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But we're gonna stop meat riding the Jets and move on to the Jags at number 10. I think that this team could be good in the future. I was very high on Travis Etienne after a couple of good performances this year. He's kind of fell down a little bit in these last few weeks, but I think that the Jags have a promising thing going with Trevor Lawrence and like Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. They've got some options in the receiving core, and I truly do think that Trevor Lawrence is becoming the quarterback we all thought he would be.
Yeah, I agree. It's just for the Jags this season at least. It's a little bit. It's just too late for them. I feel like it, because what's going to happen is they're probably going to lose one or two of the last games, and they're going to be out. But they're pretty hot right now, and I don't know. They definitely have the blueprint. I believe in the blueprint that they have there. Sure.
Yeah, they've got a good thing going. I think the problem is they traded away so many good defensive players while they were a bad team. They lost Jalen Ramsey, and they've had a lot of standouts on that defense that they've just given up for draft picks. And obviously those draft picks have helped them, but you do see the effects. They have a bad defense, and they can make some signings in the offseason that could potentially put them maybe in one of those lower seeds in the playoffs in the next couple of years.
And just another player to add to that trade list that you just had was Calais Campbell, who's now a Raven. He was a complete stud on their D-line whenever they were in the AFC Championship game, and I think that was 2017. But yeah, they traded away a lot of their good defensive players when they were bad, and now it's hurting them. But like I said earlier, they have the blueprint.
Yeah, for sure. And then to go down the rest of the list, Raiders, Browns, Steelers, Colts, and then Texans and Broncos are eliminated. I do think that the Raiders have some good players. I think that Josh McDaniel is a bad coach, and I don't think that Derek Carr is the best quarterback that they could have. But when you have Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, your offense can kind of run itself.
Yeah, and especially with how Josh Jacobs has been playing lately.
Yeah, he's the league leader in rushing yards so far, and there's nothing in his way. Devontae Adams is, of course, I still think he's the best wide receiver in the league when it comes to all-around play. He's a deep threat. He can kill it on a screen. Like, yeah, there's some guys that are better at some things than him, but when it comes to an all-around wide receiver, he's definitely the best.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's between him and D-Hop for just all-around talent wide receiver.
Interesting. See, D-Hop isn't even really on my radar because he had the PED suspension early this year. He's been hurt in the past. He doesn't have a very good quarterback in Arizona. I love to talk shit about Kyler Murray because he's just simply not good.
I agree.
But I think that I'd probably give it a top 3 right now, and that would be Devontae Adams at 1, and then I kind of feel like Stephon Diggs and Jamar Chase are like 2A and 2B, and they're both good at different things, and that's why Devontae has the edge over both of them.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know. I'm not really buying into Jamar Chase just yet. And of course, this is coming from a Steelers fan too, so you guys can just turn off your ears if you want to. But to me, he's just kind of one of those guys where he's just really good at getting open, and that's really it. I don't really see him making a lot of contested catches. I don't really see him being that clutch, showing up in big games. He's just he's got some talent, and I think he probably will be in my top 3 eventually. I'm not denying that he's probably going to be one of the best wide receivers in the league. If not, he already is already, but he would not make my top 3 for sure.
Gotcha. I don't know. I think that you kind of pointed it out yourself. He's very good at getting open. And it doesn't matter if you can't make a contested catch because there's nobody contesting you.
That is very true, but I thought with our top 3 we were talking about kind of well-rounded players. I would like to see maybe more jump balls thrown to Jamar Chase before I put him in my top 3.
Also, I just realized that I forgot Justin Jefferson exists, so he's my number 2. The other 2 can move down to 3.
Okay. Yeah, he's Justin Jefferson is the Jerry Rice of our generation. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's a take.
I don't think it
I
is. I really don't think it is. Of course, he's young, so maybe that's kind of where the hot part of the take lies, is that he's young. Now, this dude, he's crazy. I've actually been fortunate to watch a lot of Vikings games this year, weirdly enough, and he, on third down, he's always making plays. It does not seem like a single game plan has worked against him, except for whatever the hell happened against when they played the Cowboys. That was a completely fluke game, in my opinion. I still have no idea what happened to the Vikings there, but Grayson, this entire season, have not seen any team game plan Justin Jefferson and been able to stop him.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, how last week he was just having his way. They just couldn't really score any touchdowns. Like, he had he set the franchise record for receiving yards in a game.
And you're going against guys like Chris
for the
Carter,
Vikings.
Played at the Vikings on one time.
Yeah, Chris Carter. You're kind of forgetting one here.
Oh, who am I forgetting?
Randy Moss.
Yeah, that's a good one to forget. Yeah, Randy Moss.
Like, Randy Moss and Chris Carter are your competition for the most receiving yards in a game, and you just beat that in, his 3rd year in the league?
Yeah, that's very impressive. And, did Randy Moss... Who was Randy Moss's quarterback in Minnesota?
Wolf. Let's see.
That would be kind of interesting to know. Same with Chris Carter, too.
Yeah. I'm sure there's people listening that would be like, why do you guys not know this? Well, I wasn't alive. Let's see. Randall Cunningham for a little while. Let's see any others.
Well, Chris Carter played with 9 of them.
Yeah. Jeff George.
So kind of looking at the list for Chris Carter here, it's pretty impressive that Justin Jefferson was able to do it with Kirk Cousins, who Kirk Cousins is very decent, in my opinion. He's definitely pretty good, but not one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But yeah, Chris Carter had the likes of Warren Moon, Randall Cunningham, Dante Culpepper. Those are kind of the 3 notable ones I'm looking at. Rich Gannon, also for a little while.
Yeah. And Randy Moss had a couple of those guys as well. They played at a similar time. But, yeah, it's very impressive what Justin Jefferson's doing. And, yeah, he's most definitely the future of the NFL. We'll finish up with these last 3 teams. The Browns. Deshaun just isn't – he doesn't even seem like he's a part of the team yet. Like – there's something missing there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not too sure who his first game was. It was against the Texans. Yeah, his first game back was against the Texans, yes. And I'm pretty sure he didn't even throw a touchdown. And I think the Browns had a couple of, or maybe one defensive touchdown that helped him out. But yeah, I completely agree. I thought that him coming back would have been a way bigger deal, because on first note is I thought he'd play better against the Texans. Second note is, the whole allegations and all the controversy surrounding him, but I honestly sometimes forget that he's back.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure what it's going to take for him to shine with the Browns. Obviously, they put up a lot for him. So it's going to take a lot. And obviously they have Nick Chubb and he's kind of been the offense with Jacoby Brissett earlier in the season. But now you have a guy who has made a Pro Bowl. Like he was a finalist for MVP, and it's going to change how Nick Chubb plays, and it's going to completely change how Cleveland plays in the future. So I'm very interested to see how this goes. I think Deshaun needs a full offseason with this team before we can really make any
I also
judgments on
think
them.
the Browns have a couple decent tight ends. I like David Njoku and Austin Hooper. He obviously hasn't been able to rekindle that season that he had with Atlanta, but he's still a decent tight end. I think the Browns should draft wide receiver this year. I really thought Peoples-Jones would have been. I kind of thought him is in the same spot of as Alan Lazard a little bit. Is that they both were given opportunities with departures from other people at their position to step up, but they really haven't. I mean, both of them look good, but they have not became wide receiver ones, and I think that would help out Deshaun Watson a lot. Is if he had a stud at wide receiver.
Yeah, and what's tough with this is that the Browns gave up their first round pick.
Yeah.
So they don't have a first round pick this year, and they're going to have to be looking in the I believe they do have their second round. So it's going to be a little bit tougher to get a wide receiver because there's a couple of guys in this draft that are probably going to go in the first round, and it's not a really wide receiver heavy draft. So like you've got Quentin Johnston coming out of TCU. He's going to go in the first round. Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, like those guys are all going to go in the first round. So it's going to be pretty tough for the Browns to find a guy. Maybe they look towards free agency. There will probably be a couple guys available there that can make a difference. But if you're the Browns, you've got the running back, you've got the quarterback. It's just about finding the guys to put around them. And the Browns are going to have to throw out some money if they want to be as successful as they have been with the past couple of years with Baker. I know they weren't the best team, but they made the playoffs and they won a good amount of games every year. So yeah, like I said, they're going to have to put up a lot of money.
I definitely agree. It's with the whole notion of them not having a first round draft pick, is it looks like that's what's going to come down to. But who knows? Maybe they'll jump on the hottest free agent target that happens to be a wide receiver and splash some cash on them. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of an apprehensive Browns general manager and kind of front office decision making when it comes to giving wide receivers money because of what happened with Odell, and Jarvis Landry also doesn't play on that team anymore. They really haven't been very lucky with wide receivers in the past. You had Josh Gordon getting arrested, and then as I stated, the whole thing with Odell and Jarvis Landry is they haven't really been able to keep guys around in that position, but I think now it's time for them to do that because they would be a pretty decent team if they had a wide receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like they have Amari Cooper, but he hasn't had the impact that people thought he would. So it makes it a lot tougher on them when you've got one great wide receiver and not much else around him.
Yeah, completely forgot about Amari Cooper, actually. Wow. Yeah, he's been pretty quiet this year. I think that kind of goes along with what you said earlier, is he needs an offseason with Amari Cooper to form that quarterback-wide receiver bond.
Yeah, for sure. But let's before we move on from the NFL, we just hit halftime in the Thursday night football game, Seahawks 49ers. It is, I believe, 14-3 going into the half. Brock Purdy looks pretty darn
Christian
good.
McCaffrey looks absolutely amazing. Just ask my fantasy team. Oh, wow. That's nice.
He's having a good one. So is Kittle. Kittle's doing pretty good as well. He's got a receiving touchdown. So, it looks like the 49ers are just going to keep rolling. And it also looks like DK Metcalf and Jimmy Ward might beat the shit out of each other by the end of this game.
Man, DK, he's always fighting whoever he's covering. But that's usually what happens if you have a big personality that also draws, big-time personalities to cover him. I mean, That's what's going to happen. It's very impressive to see how Purdy's played in that stadium, though. That's a very hard stadium to go and play in, and I would imagine so. If you're a quarterback trying to call plays and everything, they always talk about the 12th man. So he looks good. That's good for him.
Yeah, and also that forced fumble um by who was it? I can't even remember who it was, but that forced fumble was huge. Right before the half ended, they wrap up or they wrapped up who was it? Who lost it? Travis Horner. That's right. They wrapped up Travis Horner, and he just like the ball just got launched out of his hands. He got completely like mailboxed, and they took it down, got him in good field position, and yeah, obviously paid off. But yeah, I got a feeling the 49ers are going to take
and
this one.
that's just what the 49ers do. Is their defense, not only is it hard to just drive down the field against them, but they're also going to make you they're also going to force turnovers that are just crushing blows to confidence, momentum, and all the stuff that comes with that. So I mean, this Niners defense is definitely a Super Bowl defense for sure.
Yeah, and we will kind of check in with that once we get towards the end of this episode. But we're gonna move on from the NFL. And one of the big things that Luke said at the beginning is that he knows about soccer. And I love soccer. It's like a guilty pleasure of mine. So we're gonna talk some World Cup. Just preview the third place match in the final for the World Cup. So, what is your first thoughts with Croatia versus Morocco for
Well,
third
these are
place?
two teams kind of in the similar boat. I know Croatia made it to the final last year, but I still put them in that boat of underdog. I really do, which is kind of a hot take, especially with them making it this far this year. But they're just not one of your typical big countries that will do well in a World Cup setting. I don't know. I mean, I think Morocco takes it. I really do. They're playing for pride here. I think they're pissed off that they couldn't at least make it to the final, and I think Morocco will come in with way more heart than Croatia will. I really do.
Yeah, I do think this game means a lot more to Morocco. I think Croatia had higher hopes, especially coming off of 2018. But yeah, Morocco's been so good, and like Hakim Ziyech has played pretty well. Obviously, Hakimi's been very good, but a lot of surprises with this Morocco team, and it's really going to help a couple of these guys' stocks when it comes to the
Yeah,
winter
which is
transfer
which is
window.
really interesting to see, especially with the World Cup not being in the summer. Is this actually something I haven't even thought about before? Is this January transfer window could be way bigger than it ever has because of this World Cup? Because with the World Cup also comes the summer transfer window. Every time you always have these young players who were scouted at the World Cup that are going to go to a top league. And who knows, maybe in January, it's only a month, but I'm sure teams will be trying to pack in some transfers to help themselves out.
Yeah, we see it every year. I think the most notable, to my knowledge, that I remember was 2014 James Rodriguez moving to Real Madrid after the World
Okay,
Cup.
yeah. I actually have another one from
Um,
that World Cup. Keylor Navas was not at Real Madrid
yeah,
whenever he played in that World Cup. He was signed that summer. And he
yeah,
had a great World Cup for Costa Rica that year.
yeah. But yeah, I think Morocco. It it like I said, it means a lot more. So who do you said you're going to
Yeah,
take
and
Morocco in
just to
this
your
one?
point, you put it perfectly. Is it means more to them. Croatia, with I feel like their standards were already high with how they played in the last World Cup in Russia. Morocco, they still got a lot to play for, I think, and third place, for Morocco at a World Cup would be awesome. I mean, this is their golden era for sure with Hakimi and Ziyech. So I think they have just way more to play for, and I feel like it'll carry them.
Yep. And can I get a final score prediction out of you?
Ooh. 2-0. I really I think Croatia just wants to go home at this point, honestly. And I'm not trying to dog on their pride. It is the World Cup, and it's one of the biggest deals in the world to these players. At the end of the day, it's a third place game.
Fair. I'm going to take Oh, I was thinking of taking Croatia, but with I don't know. Uh, See, they played earlier in the World Cup and they drew. It makes me want to think they're going to go to overtime, but I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go Morocco 2-1.
2-1. I like it. I like it.
2-1. All right, and then we move on to the World Cup final. France,
Oh man,
Argentina, and these are the two most well-rounded teams in this tournament.
I disagree with you.
100%.
Yeah, I think
Really?
Argentina is still a top-heavy team like they have been my entire life. They have an awesome goalie, and their defense has played well. But I still think I'm telling you, France will expose them. I think if France scores early, I don't know if Argentina has it in them to catch back up. I think Argentina has to score first to win this game. Unfortunately, because I do not want the French to win.
Dude, I don't know. I feel like Argentina has a great team top to bottom. Like, obviously, Messi is the star, but Julian Alvarez has been amazing. And, like, Tagliafico on the end, or playing fullback. Martinez is obviously a great goalkeeper, but I really do think they've got a great team.
I definitely agree. They have some big name players, and they have Otamendi, the veteran who's been there forever, so he's seen it all. But I don't think it's going to be enough to stop the French, man. Mbappe is on pace right now to beat Pele's, like, I feel like it's under 24 years of age World Cup goal record or something like that. I don't remember what the statistic actually is, but Mbappe will have at least 2 this game, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously you're taking France.
Yes.
And so that kind of leads to my next question that, that kind of answers. Do you think that Messi is going to fall short again
Unfortunately,
in a World Cup final?
If he had a more favorable matchup, maybe Morocco beat France somehow, I think it's Messi's World Cup. But man, it would be a special story if Messi was to beat France, but I don't think he will. I do not think he will.
Interesting. So, because you think France is going to win, you already kind of talked about Mbappe, but who do you think is truly going to lead the way in such a star-studded French side?
That's a good question, and I think I'm going to go bold here. Obviously, I've said Mbappe with 2 goals. I think it's going to be Hugo Lloris. And that's because I think Argentina will definitely put up an offense against France. I don't think Argentina is going to get walked all over in this World Cup, or in the final at least. I really don't. But it's going to take some incredible saves from Hugo Lloris to keep Messi out of goal, to keep all of Argentina's strikers out of goal for France to win.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and just give my prediction. I think Argentina in pens. I think it'll be 1-1 throughout full time and extra time, and they'll go to pens, and Argentina will come out with it. Yeah, man, I'm not getting that deep.
I was just asking because Messi has shown some not clutch moments in Argentina in recent years.
Fair enough, but he did make his pen in the last game.
I was very happy to see that.
Oh, George Kittle just scored another touchdown.
Did he really? It sucks that my game's behind your game, but yeah, George Kittle's been awfully quiet this year.
Yeah, this is his game because now Debo's out.
Wow. Well, I guess I'll give my score prediction now. I think it'll be France 3-1. They'll win in regular time. And I think Mbappe will score twice.
You got any predictions on goal scorers?
Twice.
Oh, okay. Who's going to score that third?
I don't know who will score the third. I feel like the third might come off of a set piece, but Mbappe will score an open play twice. Yeah.
Okay. All right. In my score predictions, Olivier Giroud and Julian Alvarez.
I like that. So no Messi.
Time.
No Messi goal.
No, Messi will probably get the assist.
Okay. Gotcha. I actually, speaking of Messi, I saw an interesting take today from another podcast, actually, that I follow on Instagram. And one of the guys on the podcast said that Messi's World Cup this year in Qatar is better than 2014. And I'm gonna be honest, I couldn't disagree more.
Whoa. Yeah. No, I think he was like easily the best player in the
That's one of the best
2014 World
single
Cup.
player tournament like performances I've ever seen. And I don't see how Messi is really he's definitely been awesome for Argentina this World Cup. But in 2014 he was different for sure.
Yeah, I feel like he had much more control over what like everything that happened on the field. Of course, 5 goals and 3 assists is an outstanding performance so far. But I think when it came to that 2014 World Cup, he was extremely dominant. He just got unlucky in that final against Germany. Germany was a very good team that year. They had a lot of
they
talent.
put 7 past the home team. Crushed them. I mean that's a lot of goals for a World Cup, and it's especially a lot of goals against Brazil in Brazil. I mean that all-time, one of the most important games ever in soccer, really. But yeah, Germany was just no match, or Argentina was no match for the Germans in 2014. But like I said, Messi was way better in 2014, in my opinion, for sure.
Yeah, man, thinking about that 2014 World Cup just makes me think, what happened to Mario Götze?
Yeah, he let's see, I think that summer, actually a transfer we didn't talk about, and this is kind of just going off of memory, I want to say it was that summer he moved to Bayern Munich, or a couple summers after, but he completely flopped at Bayern Munich, and then when he came back to Dortmund, he just wasn't the same player. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was that summer. Was that also the same year that it was. That's when Toni Kroos went to Real Madrid.
Yeah, we missed a couple big transfers, but yeah, I didn't think of that. That's another one.
Yeah, that was quite a World Cup for transfers. I feel like I can't remember any from 2018.
No. Not really. 2018 World Cup was pretty bad, though, in my opinion. It wasn't really as exciting as this one, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it was harder to follow along with. And something we talked about before we started recording with the World Cup was that it being in November and December is that, we're both college kids. We've got things going on. It's hard to keep up with. But I feel like this one's been more exciting. There's been so much media coverage when it comes to an international standpoint. And I think that all relies on the fact that the men's national team made it and they actually looked kind of good.
This is something that I'll remember until the day I die. I will never forget looking at my fucking Instagram feed after the United States went 1-0 up against Wales. It was, I don't know if you can attest to this, but it was like we had won the fucking World Cup. The fact that the United States, who missed out in Russia in 2018, was finally back, had so much hype and question marks surrounding the team, went 1-0 up against Gareth Bale's team. I thought that was a really special moment for
our country. And it's like it was special for us. But if you're somebody who's been paying attention to soccer,
yeah,
Wales sucks.
That's true.
Like they talked about it. The last guy before Timothy Weah to score a goal on Wales was Pele when he was 17 years old. Like, Wales has sucked for a long time. But honestly, I think that the England game was better than the Wales one. And, even if we would have beaten Wales, drawing England 0-0
and not only
was
drawing,
huge
also having
for
chances
the U.S.
against
fans.
England. It wasn't like we just parked the bus and got peppered with shots the entire game. We attacked back and actually had chances to score. It was crazy.
Yeah, and I think that Pulisic's performance in this World Cup was great. I think Tyler Adams shined. He was the captain of the team. He didn't have a huge goal scoring impact at all when it comes to assists or goals, but you could see his leadership on the field, and that is extremely
And on
promising
top
from
of
such a
that
young
is I'm
player.
sure you remember that Iranian journalist that like asked the dumbest fucking question of all time, trying to corner him into saying some bad response, and he handled it perfectly at just 23 years old. He's already going in front of the media and completely shutting down, bullshit questions. And he didn't even get mad at the journalist for asking the way he did. He just articulated his way through it beautifully, like a leader should. And that's what the United States need right now. I feel like is just a Tyler Adams on the team, which we have. And who knows what he'll look like once he's more developed, because he's still young.
Yeah, we need leadership, and we need a center
And
back that's
a
better
big
than
thing with the
Walker
United
Zimmerman.
States, and this is coming from an Atlanta United fan, is we did not have Miles Robinson, who was having a tremendous MLS season before he tore his Achilles.
Yes,
Yeah,
Miles
I would have
Robinson
really
is
liked to see him
amazing.
in Qatar, but unfortunately he missed out.
But is there any big moments outside of like what we just talked about with the U.S. From this
Oh
World Cup
man.
that really stood out to you?
Oh, we've already kind of covered Morocco and how crazy they were. I would say Ronaldo being benched was probably a really big moment for Portugal and just the world of football in general.
Yeah, like that was huge, and I think that my biggest or one of my favorite moments kind of rides off the back of him being benched, and that's Gonzalo Ramos's hat trick in the round of 16 against Switzerland. Like you, like Ronaldo just got sat for you. You are
What a
starting over
moment.
Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the greatest players of all time, and you stepped up in on the biggest stage. Obviously, it's not the final. You're in the knockout rounds of the World Cup. Like this is the biggest stage in international soccer, and Gonzalo Ramos
I couldn't agree
stepped up.
more. I will say though, the contrary to that was I'm pretty sure Ronaldo was actually bent. Yeah, he was benched against Morocco the next game, obviously because they had a hat trick. But
Yep.
man, I don't know. I cannot help but think that decision is very loud against Morocco, and loud as in that's very controversial. The fact that they benched Ronaldo again, but at the same time, going back to what I said, is he literally is coming off of a hat trick. So why would you not start him? But Portugal put up no goals, and Ronaldo was subbed in, but it's always different for
Yeah,
subs. It's always different for subs. It's harder, and I don't know. I feel like and
it is. It's hard to get it going,
regardless of
but
Ramos
uh,
scoring a hat trick, this is the bottom line. You benched Ronaldo in a quarterfinal game, granted against Morocco, which maybe even by the quarterfinals, people were still doubting them. You still benched Cristiano Ronaldo, and your team didn't score. So I feel like that's a pretty big decision. What do you think?
yeah, no, I agree, and I think the other kind of weird part about that is how they did the substitutions because they brought in Ronaldo in the 51st minute for Ruben Neves. So Gonzalo Ramos was still playing striker, and Ronaldo kind of forced himself into like a false nine,
Never
and
has
that's
been.
just not what
Never
Ronaldo
has been his
does.
entire career.
Yeah, and like it just really confused me. And then obviously he kind of moved into the striker position once they brought in Leao for Gonzalo Ramos, but you just didn't give him enough time. Obviously, you brought in Ronaldo for the almost the whole second half, but he wasn't in his position. Look, Ronaldo, his entire career has been based off of speed and strength and physicality, and I know he's getting old and he's losing those abilities, but you still got to
Yeah,
feed him.
I really have nothing else to add to that. Is Ronaldo just needs to be fed. I feel like Ronaldo has adapted his game very well. As you know, he's getting slower. He's not as fast of a dribbler. His skills have kind of got away, but he still has that physical presence. So I feel like Ronaldo has done a good job of kind of altering his play style in club football to kind of become more of like a standstill just finisher, because you can't take away his finishing. I mean, header, left foot, right foot, you name it, he can do it. And I don't know, a false nine. where the striker drops back into kind of like a cam role, almost a center attacking mid. That's not Ronaldo. He's never been a playmaker. Of course, you're going to not score if Ronaldo's in a false nine, even when he's Cristiano Ronaldo. And I feel like dropping him into the false nine kind of role really takes away from what he has formed his play style to be in his later stage of his career. And I don't know, Portugal, I think Portugal lost this game tactically, 100%.
Yeah, no, I think that one, I think it falls on the manager, and it just was bad. Like, Portugal had 73% of the possession in that game.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing, and no goals to show for it, too.
Yeah, and like you've got to do something with that. Like you've got some, and like they made the, I believe, yeah, they started. Who was it? They didn't start Paulinho. They didn't start Carvalho. Like there was some weird spots on this team where I was a little bit confused about how they made this lineup for the Morocco game because it was a bit different from what we
I couldn't
saw
agree
in
more,
the prior matches.
And one notable benching that I just noticed is João Cancelo sat for a lot, which is egregious in my opinion. And Rafael Leao, who is absolutely torn it up for AC Milan, is also on the bench. But I mean, the attack for Portugal is loaded. But yeah, I mean, they, like I said, is the manager had come off of a tactical, masterpiece in the game previously, but in this game it just seems like they just kind of fumbled it. They really didn't have a sure tactic of what to do, especially in the second half when they started making their substitutions.
Yeah, and then like, look, I know that Bruno Fernandes can play on the left, but I feel like if anything, he should have been starting in either a cam or false nine spot rather than playing on the left. I feel like you should have put Bernardo Silva on the left.
You're putting,
or sorry, they were on the right. I was mixed up. I was looking at it backwards.
You're kind of
but
taking
still.
away Fernandez's playing ability, putting him out on the wing. I believe he needs to be in the center where he can kind of control more.
Yeah, and like he's got the ability to make a shot from outside the box. So what's happening is you're cutting off all of your crossing ability on the right side because Bruno naturally is going to cut in towards the box.
I agree. I agree with that.
I think what killed Portugal, and you just said it earlier, it was tactics and the way that they played these matches just wasn't to their full ability.
Yeah, and it obviously, it seems like with the whole tactics thing is they completely underestimated the Moroccans, which a lot of people did, but it's the quarterfinals of the World Cup. You should not be underestimating anybody. I mean, if you're in a World Cup quarterfinal, you're there for a reason.
Yes, and yeah, they surely fell short. They should have been better. They had a great team. Another team that probably should have been better was Brazil. They looked great in the group stages. They looked great round one, and then
they were
lose
actually
to Croatia.
My favorites to win the entire thing, and I don't think that's a very far-fetched thing to say at all. But yeah, I'm very surprised that it only stayed at 1 goal for them against Croatia. Very surprised. And then the whole penalty taking situation is I'm not too sure off the top of my head, but I want to say that Brazil had an abnormally amount of they had a lot of young guys taking the penalties, and that's really never a good sign, no matter how talented the young player is taking a penalty in the World Cup.
Yeah, like their penalty setup went Rodrigo, Casemiro, Pedro, and Marquinhos, and like I feel like they had more talent there to
and I
be
couldn't
taking the
agree more,
penalties.
and especially Rodrigo. I mean, he's been amazing at Real Madrid, but he doesn't need to be taking a penalty there. I mean, bless him. He's that young, put in that situation. And I mean, props to Brazil for believing in him and thinking that he was ready, but I mean, it's the World Cup. You can't mess up. And I don't think he should take a penalty yet.
Yeah, well, and it also hurt them because what happened earlier in the game is they subbed off a good amount of their penalty scores. They subbed off Vinny for Rodrigo. They subbed out Richarlison for Pedro. And I just feel like when it came down to it, obviously those substitutions happened before they knew they were going to be going to penalties. But still, it ended up hurting them in the long run. And also, I would assume that Neymar was probably reserved to go fifth. But he should have been. He should have taken a penalty in
I
this
get
situation.
it. A lot of people, especially in the World Cup, I feel like a lot of soccer players probably wouldn't want to be put in this situation, no matter how confident or good they think they are. And Neymar, see that first penalty, whoever takes that first penalty, it is such a big deal because you almost kind of set the tone for how it's going to go. And I feel like Neymar needs to take that first penalty, especially if Rodrigo is going to be involved. Because, I mean, I'm sure Rodrigo, idolizes Neymar. Nice to see Neymar, take a penalty and score before he went up to take a penalty. And yeah, I get, having your best penalty taker taking the fifth penalty. But at the same time, I feel like you just got to go first, man. You got to go first and set the tone for the rest of your team.
Yeah, and I think the shining part of this Brazil team, even though they were scoring a decent amount, was the defense. They didn't let up more than one goal in any match outside of obviously the penalty kicks against Croatia. But Thiago Silva and Marquinhos have a connection that goes back to PSG, and they've been playing alongside each other for a good amount of years as the starters for Brazil. And that defense looked solid. Like they gave up what 3 goals in the entire tournament,
and especially coming from a Chelsea fan. Thiago Silva is a living legend. We should be watching every minute of Thiago Silva's defense until he's done, because that guy, not a lot of people are giving him enough media attention. I think he is a stud at 38 years old. It's amazing to watch. I love Thiago Silva.
Yeah, I do question one part of the defense, which is Eder Militao starting at right back. I think that's a little interesting. When I was thinking of what this Brazil team would look like, I thought they would run 3 at the back with Silva, Marquinhos, and Militao. But
yeah, it is very strange to hear that
Militao
was played at right back, because I don't think he does that for Real Madrid, and I want to say the last time he played fullback regularly was in his Porto days. So he is long gone from being a fullback, and that is very questionable.
Yeah, but we can have questions about this Brazil lineup for ages, because there's just so much talent that you could play anybody anywhere and they'd get it done. Do you have any other big moments
oh man
from this World Cup?
Actually, yeah. Mexico not making it through their group stage. What do you think about that, Grayson?
It's crazy. Look, growing up in the United States, and kind of becoming a soccer fan later in my life, a lot of the national team attention was on Mexico. A lot of the people that paid attention to soccer that were around me weren't really fans of the U.S. men's national team. So I've always paid attention a lot to Mexico's national team. And this is like the first time they didn't make it out of the group stage.
I don't know the exact statistic on that, but it's definitely been a while, I would assume, for them.
Yeah, and they've had legendary games in the World Cup, Ochoa in 2014.
That's the flop.
Yes,
Robin's flop. Oh man, that flop was that ended a very good Mexico team in that tournament. But yeah, this year was super strange. There already kind of was a group of death, because you had a Saudi team that was highly underrated, in my opinion. They were one of those teams, kind of like Morocco, going through a just rare generational wave of talent. Is a lot of guys from that Saudi team were studs in the Saudi league, and they proved it. I mean, they beat Argentina, which was a another moment that we can go more in depth about, but that Saudi team was really good. On top of Saudi Arabia, you obviously had Lionel Messi in Argentina and Poland, who were going through one of their generational teams. But I still expected Mexico to go through, and they just kind of didn't really deliver. And it came down to them because you had Argentina that walked all over Poland, and it was up to Mexico against Saudi Arabia, and then Saudi Arabia gets a last second goal and knocks them out. I mean, it was in Mexico's hands, and they fumbled it.
Yeah, and I guess the last two things that I didn't even think about us talking about. Group E, the way that that one finished with Japan taking that group, Spain coming in second, and then Germany missing out.
Oh man, yeah,
It is wild to me.
I really thought Japan were going to fumble it because I'm pretty sure they benched a lot of their players against Costa Rica, and they ended up losing that game. But they somehow still ended up making it through there. And yeah, Germany. I have no words for Germany. I have no idea what went wrong. It just didn't really look that great.
Yeah, I think with Germany is like they had a couple of guys that have developed over the years, especially since that 2014 team, but they still have guys in their lineup from that 2014 team that are just kind of getting up there in age, and they seem to be guys that probably should have moved on from at this point. I get that Thomas Muller is still a great player, but he's on the older side. And obviously, Manuel Neuer is an outstanding keeper, but it obviously just wasn't working. And like they have great young players. Leon Goretzka is amazing. Kimmich is amazing, but like Niklas Süle is starting at center back for this squad, and
Yeah,
it's
and I
crazy.
mean he does play at Bayern, but he's not a crazy talented center back, especially if you think of him among the other center backs in this World Cup. Is he's just not up there.
Yeah, I had a lot of questions, and I'm surprised that Mario Götze is even on this squad. I feel like there's so much more talented players. The fact that he's even getting subbed in is surprising, but like, yes, there is talent across this lineup. It just doesn't seem to
Yeah,
be
I couldn't agree
cohesive.
more. I really have nothing else to add. It's just very strange what happened to Germany, and it seemed like kind of with what you said going back earlier is they had a lot of older guys like Cruz and Manuel Neuer, and there isn't really much young talent to fill those gaps. I feel like there's just not enough of it. There's definitely some of it with Kimmich, like you mentioned, but there's just not enough of it yet.
Yeah, and like having Leroy Sané and Serge Gnabry, like those guys are really good players, but you know, Bayern Munich as a team maybe could have won the World Cup, but some of those guys are the weak links on that Bayern lineup. So yeah, I think that in these next 4 years, I think Germany will completely change when it comes to the next World Cup roster. I got a feeling Manuel Neuer won't be there for the next World Cup. I got a feeling Muller won't be there. And there's a lot of young German players that are going to get a shot,
Yeah, I think
and I'm
it'll be one
interested
of
to see how it
those
goes.
where that'll kind of be like a big media talk point going into the World Cup is that Germany may not have a lot of those guys who won in 2014, but you know that could be pretty good or bad. Is it creates a pretty good story for the young guys if they can show up, and if they don't show up, then it's just a rebuild year.
Yeah, and then obviously Spain. We got to talk about them because they struggled, and they're a team that is rather young, and so obviously it comes down to experience with them. But they played great. It just seemed like they didn't do
I agree.
enough.
Is Spain is a very young team, and I want to say the World Cup kind of shocked them a little bit. I feel like they were one of the teams that they were young but talented, and they just weren't ready for the task of handling the gravity of the World Cup.
Yeah, like they have the amazing young talent like Pedri. Marcos Llorente, Gavi. Like there is a lot of great talent. It just seems like this isn't as star-studded of a Spain team as we've
I
seen
like how
in
you said
prior World Cups.
Llorente. That was nice.
Yeah, man. Hey, man, I took 5 Spanish classes
Oh
in my
man,
life.
but
I
yeah,
got
Spain is going to be one of those teams that they will be much bigger and better next World Cup with all those young guys that you mentioned, more developed and more accustomed to the big game moments of the World Cup.
also Ansu Fati should be starting.
That's kind of bold. Going off of what I just kind of went off of is I think he's one of those that would have been too young. But if you're struggling, play him. That's kind of my idea with Fati.
Exactly. It's
Yeah,
not going to
no,
help
I
if
agree.
he's just sitting on the
I agree.
bench. And like I feel like England has done a good job of that, of playing the young guys. Like Bukayo Saka got a ton of experience from the Euros, and then going into this World Cup, he was a great
I
player
couldn't
for
agree
that
with you more.
squad.
England were one of those teams that
And
they had a lot of young guys in 2018. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with Frank Lampard at Chelsea. I mean, he gave us Tammy Abraham and Mason Mount, which I know Tammy Abraham isn't necessarily, a starter on the England national team, but the English players, there were a lot of them that were young, and Frank Lampard put some of them on the map. Reece James being one of them, who sadly didn't play in this World Cup. But yeah, the English were super young, and last year they looked good, and I expected more from them this year.
yeah, Jude Bellingham is obviously a super young, great talent. Declan Rice is he's fully into his career, but still becoming a great player. Um, but obviously, I think it's some of the older
Well,
guys that
that's a
hold
bold.
them back. Like I don't think that Kyle Walker is as good as he used to be. I don't think Jordan Henderson is either. And I think they could have gone other ways. Like Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't starting in the England national team. That's kind of
Yeah,
crazy to
no,
me.
I agree, and I think after that France game, yeah, Kyle Walker, man, he's just got to get phased out. That was a really poor defensive showcase, I feel like, from the English against France.
Yeah. And we obviously have to give our flowers to Luke Shaw for not dying in this
Yeah,
World
he
Cup
always
because he
is
seems to die
dead.
in every competition. But I think that's gonna wrap it up for us with the World Cup, and that'll put us into this week's Stake Your
I'm
Claim.
excited.
And Luke, I want you to go first because I'm very excited.
All right,
You really hyped this
listen
up before the
up.
recording.
Okay, this is my time as a Steelers fan to really just piss on our quarterback situation right now. If Ben Roethlisberger plays this season, and the Steelers, yeah, you
Oh
already
my
know it's
God,
coming. You already know it's coming because
No.
listen, as a Steelers fan, I have watched us struggle through so many close games where I can sit there and say, yeah, the Steelers beat the Steelers today, and it happened all damn season long. And I think the difference maker is Ben Roethlisberger. If he's in the game, he wins those games, and we have a record above 500, 100%. There is no doubt in my mind. And it's just it really comes down to the young quarterback and the quarterback play. Kenny Pickett in recent weeks has looked awesome, and I am very excited about him, and I think he is the franchise. But I would have loved to have seen Ben play one more year and draft Kenny under him because the Steelers look a lot better than I thought we would this year, and I feel like our missing piece would have been Ben Roethlisberger.
I don't know. I feel like it was time to move on. I think Ben needed to retire. He was getting old. He was getting beat up. And like the last thing you want to see is this legend, like a guy that Steelers fans have watched for years and years, just absolutely suck. It's hard to watch. Like I was having that with Matt Ryan last year as a Falcons fan. Like he was my guy. And like I saw him in 2016 when he was an MVP, and watching him last year was hard to do. And so I feel like it's seasons like that where you try to extend your career when you don't need to, that tarnish your legacy amongst the fans. And so I think Ben Roethlisberger getting out of that situation was the
I
best thing for
definitely
him
agree with you.
and his legacy.
I really do agree with you because as a Steelers fan, I couldn't bring myself to watch Ben Roethlisberger be worse than he already was last season. But to go against one of the points you made is he was getting beat up, but he played every game last season.
Yes, I get that. But I mean, past injuries as well, those are still looming, especially with an older guy like Ben. And I think it's obvious that he's enjoying his retirement. His podcast is awesome. But I think that this season was important for Mike Tomlin because I'm pretty sure the entire time he's been with the Steelers, Ben has been the guy. And it's going to be interesting to see what Mike Tomlin can bring to Pittsburgh to make a change, because I don't think that Mike Tomlin's going to get fired. He's got a contract until he wants to retire. But we've seen many different eras of the Steelers under Mike Tomlin, and I'm interested to see what happens over the course of these next couple of years.
Because a lot of people, always, this was the one argument against Mike Tomlin, is a lot of fans would say, but he won the Super Bowl against Arizona. Well, the players on that team were Roethlisberger, Polamalu, James Harrison. I mean, you had all these guys, but the one factor that they all had in common was the main guys were drafted by Bill Cowher, the coach before Mike Tomlin. The main argument against Mike Tomlin has always been that the team that Tomlin won championships with, or a championship with, was with Cowher's team. And he's never had to draft a quarterback in his entire career, or at least a franchise quarterback. And yeah, this season was a big season for him, and I really hate the people that are calling for his job, honestly, because there are some out there.
Yeah, no, you can't call for Mike Tomlin's job. That's ridiculous. Mike Tomlin, look, the Steelers don't fire their coaches. They've had like three, I think I said it in an episode a couple of weeks ago. The Steelers have had like three coaches in the last like 40 years. So Mike Tomlin's got a job as long as he wants one. And it's just about what he brings in. Obviously, quarterback is something that needs help. And obviously, you can sit around and you can wait on Kenny Pickett to get good. I think he will be good at some point. Do I think it'll be within, the end of this season or next season? Probably not. He'll probably have his moments, but it's going to be a process. And I think that people just need to strap in and realize that Mike Tomlin's going to do his thing. He's going to do what his team needs to win. And he's drafted very well on the defensive side. And that is something that's really shined. TJ Watt is by far the best defensive player in the league.
Man,
and I'm willing to say that.
I hear a lot of Micah Parsons these days, which is another force, but TJ still got it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Micah Parsons is definitely up there. I think TJ has a full skill set. Yes. Obviously, Micah Parsons is ridiculous, but I think that TJ's quarterback pressure is a little bit better than Micah's.
And TJ is obviously, you've seen his interceptions, especially the one against Burrow in the last Steelers-Bengals game where he just jumped up and caught the ball. He's catching a Joe Burrow pass at point-blank range, which is insanity to me. Insanity.
Yeah, half of his receivers and running backs can't do that.
They cannot. All right, Grayson, I want to hear your hot take. Let's hear it.
All right. Well, I'm so glad that you went with the Steelers because I also have a take about my NFL team. I think that Desmond Ridder will play well enough that the Falcons will not draft a quarterback this year.
That's a big one. So let's hear why, because he doesn't have a lot of games to prove himself anymore.
I think that at this point, obviously, Mariota has been kind of squeezed out, and that happens to him. It's happened to him twice now in his career. He's gotten squeezed out by an offense led by Arthur Smith. Interesting. But I truly do think that Desmond Ritter is a good quarterback, and I think just like I've said before, it is that new quarterback boost and like that. It's similar to like the interim head coach boost that a lot of teams get, where something drastic changes with the team, and everybody's willing to play. And look, if Desmond Ritter looks great, that means that he looks great without Calvin Ridley, without Kyle Pitts, and obviously I think that this week we're probably just going to keep running the ball, but we're going to give Desmond Ritter the opportunity to play his game. He's got Drake London, he's got Olamide Zaccheaus. Like, there are still guys on this team that can make a difference in the receiving game, and I do think that Desmond Ritter has good things to show. I think that the Falcons would be stupid to pass up if maybe CJ Stroud or Bryce Young falls to them. But if the Falcons have a top 10 pick and they take Will Levis, I'm going to lose my mind.
Oh, man. Why is that?
Will Levis sucks. And when it comes to the other quarterbacks that would be available, Hendon Hooker would be awesome. Okay, he would really fit in with this offense. But the guy's already 25 years old. And then with the other guys that are available, I just don't see as much value. Anthony Richardson is worse than Will Levis by a wide margin. And I just, if you can't get CJ Stroud and you can't get Bryce Young and you're in the top 10, it's not worth getting another quarterback. Get something else. There's plenty of other problems with this team.
From USC. Yeah.
Yeah. You could wait on Caleb Williams. Shit, you could wait on Jordan Travis from Florida State.
Yeah, I like it. But see, the argument, though, and I'm so tired of hearing this. I get why. But, Will Levis did play in the SEC. I hate that argument. I can't stand that argument anymore. I get that they're playing against better talent, but just go for the guy that's good, man. I mean, Will Levis is on a mediocre Kentucky team that completely lost its the track that it was going on. I mean, they looked good at the beginning of the season, but they kind of fell apart there mid-season, I feel like, and Will Levis was a part of that.
Yeah, no, like Kentucky sucked, and yeah, Will Levis is like a GM's dream, because if you just looked at him, he's tall, he's got a 10.5-inch hand. Like, people want a quarterback that's built that way. I just think that it's the decision making, it's just the raw ability that he shows on the field that doesn't separate him from any other guy.
I really like how you put that. Is he doesn't do anything amazing like Caleb Williams or CJ Stroud do that separate them. I like that usage of the word, because it's true. Will Levis is just another quarterback. He is just another Stetson Bennett in this draft, or well, in this kind of like quarterback class.
Yeah, he is. I do think that Stetson will probably get picked up like super late in the draft, and then probably retire within the next couple of years, become the quarterback's coach at Georgia, eventually become an offensive coordinator.
I don't even think he can do that.
Probably in the next 10 years.
That's also just how Stetson's my hot take, because I hear it all the time on campus, is people love to suck the cock and balls of Stetson Bennett. I'm tired of it. I can't. The guy puts up crazy numbers, and he's a national championship. I can never take that away from him, and I'll never dog on his mentality. But if he wasn't on Georgia football, he would be mediocre at best, and we wouldn't fucking know the name. We wouldn't know the name, but people love this guy. And I don't root against him. I mean, I'm a dog, right? I pull for Stetson to do well. But the delusion that he has created in Athens is unbelievable, and I hate to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, Georgia fans did the same thing with Jake Fromm.
How many Super Bowls did he win? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least one of their quarterbacks has a Super Bowl now.
That is true.
But yeah, I don't see the allure with Stetson. Trust me, we both know plenty of Georgia fans, and they love Stetson Bennett. He's not going to be anything. look, he was a national champion. He's got a great story. Now he's a Heisman finalist. But I think that's the extent of Stetson
Yeah,
Bennett as a player. He's got a name, and yeah, he's got quite a resume as a not as a
for sure.
player, but
And that
as
kind
a
of goes back
leader
to
of a
that mentality.
team.
But I think the delusion in Athens it's a lot of it has been created by Kirby Smart, because this is, oh my God, I can't tell you how many times I've heard it in his fucking post game interviews. Kirby Smart always. So Kirby, the offense kind of struggled on the road today, and he's always like, "Oh, SEC's it's so tough to play here on the road. I'm just happy we won." And it's just, oh, it fucking pisses me off, because if we had a Heisman level quarterback on this football team, there wouldn't be such a thing as a road game. There wouldn't, with how stacked Georgia is. And Kirby continues to make excuses for him, which I get it. He's your starting quarterback. You want to take pressure off of him, but it's egregious. And they don't even really game plan for Stetson anymore. You can see in the amount of times Stetson throws the ball during a game, they don't even let him throw. I mean, it's unbelievable, the delusion that people have around Stetson Bennett. But I like him, and I think he'll go back to back this year. But it's just people need to stop thinking that he's top tier.
Yeah, and honestly, um, I don't think that JT Daniels should have started over him last year, but I do think that because he earned that spot, he just got to play this year. I think Carson
Yeah,
Beck is
I'm
probably a better
excited because
quarterback,
Georgia
and we'll
has
see that
some
next year.
5-star talents, I'm pretty sure, that are sitting behind Stetson right now. I'm really excited to see them get their opportunity for sure.
Yeah, like Carson Beck is about to start his
Wow.
career at
Yeah,
Georgia as
he's
a
gone a
junior.
long way without really being the starter.
And I think that in Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift's situation, they both have had the opportunity to play against guys, even on like the second team, um, guys that'll probably end up in the NFL. So the best thing about playing at Georgia is that even at practice, you're facing guys that are all Americans, guys that are going to make an impact on NFL rosters. And I think that they've got a great thing going at Georgia to become the
Yeah, I
next
agree, and a lot of that I
dynasty in
feel like
college
has to
football.
do with the other team in the SEC, Alabama. Nick Saban's only getting older, and kind of like with Tom Brady, is you're seeing a lot of angry Saban this year. There's been a lot of blow-ups by Saban this year, and I think it's because he's suffering. He's getting choked out by the rest of the SEC and especially Georgia.
Yeah, I think that me and Brock have talked about this a lot on other episodes, and that the transfer portal and NIL is changing the scape. Um, the entire NCAA has been flipped on its head with transfers and NIL, and I think that Alabama is kind of they're going to be the team that's made an example of when it comes to all that, because nobody wants to be in Tuscaloosa. They just want to play for Nick Saban. But you rather play for Nick Saban and be a backup for 2 years because there's already great players, or go to Vanderbilt and get NIL money and play a ton of games and get the experience against SEC players still. Like, I think that now that the money's involved, and if you go somewhere, you can just leave next year.
Yeah, I
It
completely
totally
agree,
changes
and
everything.
this is coming from somebody who just got into college football this year. And NIL deals, I really hope that they spread the talent in college football, and especially in the SEC with teams that can offer these big NIL deals. I feel like we might see more. We might see more competition in the SEC than it already has already.
Yeah, and we've already started to see it. Like I said, Vanderbilt, um, they've kind of been the laughing stock, and then this year they upset a
Yeah,
couple
one
of
of them being
teams that
Tennessee.
nobody really thought they would
Yeah,
have. The South Carolina, yeah, that would
yeah,
have been insane, but unfortunately they got their ass kicked. Um, but then like South Carolina Shane Beamer is doing a great thing there, but the transfer portal is getting hot, and there's so much talent leaving South Carolina now. And like we talked about it on Tuesday's episode, that we thought that South Carolina players were really buying in with Shane Beamer, and it doesn't seem to be the case with how many transfers are going out. But at the same time, it's going to be a revolving door at a lot of college football programs with transfers. Guys are going to come in, guys are going to go out, and there's going to be a lot more parity when it comes to the college football playoff and
Speaking
who's
of
in the top 10
year after year. What do you
year.
think? What the fuck do you think is going to happen with Purdue next year? I am very curious to hear your take on this.
I don't know, really. I think they're going to be okay. I don't think they're going to be great, but I did see that Drew Brees has been brought on as an interim assistant coach, which is super interesting. I have no idea, what Drew Brees could bring to that program. I get that, he's a legend and one of the best quarterbacks of all time, but, does he really have the chops to coach a team in one of the best conferences in college football?
That's
Probably
a very
not.
good point, but I think I don't know with Purdue, Drew Brees could offer a lot of help to the quarterback. I think obviously maybe we'll see a big quarterback transfer there with Drew Brees as the assistant head coach or assistant coach. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe a kid that has idolized Drew Brees for their coming up. Maybe a kid from Louisiana, Mississippi, even Southern Texas. You could see that happening, but I still don't think that Purdue's going to be
Probably
a nice
not.
destination for most guys.
I meant to say Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Deion Sanders.
Makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, Colorado. I think Colorado is going to be a huge thing because Deion has now proved that he can coach college football. Whether he's the one, really making the decisions, that's probably not the case. But Deion is a teacher, and he's a personality, and he is a very emotional coach. And the thing is when it comes to cornerbacks and things like that, you don't find a lot of secondary coaches that were top guys in the league. But Deion Sanders can still teach the secondary, his things, and that's coming from one of the best corners of all time. So you can't really pass up the opportunity. Like Travis Hunter was, I believe, going to commit to Florida State, or was committed to Florida State, decommitted, and chose Jackson State because of Deion Sanders. And now we're going to see the same thing with Colorado, except there's going to be a whole lot more transfers. They've already transferred in. Yeah, it's Division I, but at the FBS level, it is a whole big step up. So I'm interested to see it. I think Colorado will probably end up being like a top 5 or 6 team in the Pac-12 next year. I definitely don't think they'll contend for the top, but I also don't think they'll be as bad as they were this year.
I'm definitely excited.
It's going to be interesting.
A little bit disrespectful though on Mr. Deion's part is I heard that when he first was hired as Colorado's head coach, he pretty much said, "Look, some of y'all better hit the transfer portal because you're not going to play." And I don't know. To me, that was kind of like, come on, Deion. Like, you can't work with what you've got a little bit, but I don't know. His whole notion, the whole thing that he is based, seems kind of like a revolving door. Like he's just in it to bring in the talent.
Yeah, actually, me and Brock had this exact same conversation on Tuesday's episode. But yeah, and I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna argue for Deion. Look, Deion wants to win. He doesn't give a shit. And look, Colorado sucked last year. So if he needs to clean house, he's gonna clean house. But Deion wants to win. It's just who he is. He's not gonna put up with some shit. He's not gonna, there's no transition phase now. Now that you can transfer whoever you want and they can just play, There's no such thing as waiting on these guys, waiting on Deion Sanders guys, or waiting on this head coach's guys to get in. They can be his guys if he decides to be active in the
Sure.
transfer portal,
I
and that's
definitely agree
exactly
with
what
that.
he's doing. And last thing I wanted to touch on, there was a couple of MLB free agent signings that have happened between Tuesday's recording and today. The big one, Carlos Correa, 13 years, $350 million to go to the Giants. And I'll be honest, all offseason, I thought he was going to New York. And I'd love to get what you think about Carlos
I don't
Correa
really care. I mean, he
ditching
is
the
the one that
Yankees for
said
the
that Jeter
Giants.
wasn't really that good. I well,
Is he
the
wrong?
WAR definitely has something to say about that, but Jeter is the most clutch defensive player of all time, in my opinion. I mean, his plays are ridiculous.
Well, I mean,
That was really it. I mean, I don't know.
whatever. Go on.
Carlos Correa, he's definitely a good shortstop, but I don't think the Yankees really needed him. I'm not too upset about that.
That's fair. Do you think that the Yankees are going to be shopping for Dansby, or you think
I
they're
think
just
the
going to kind
Yankees
of
will end up
settle for what
settling
they've
for what
got?
they got, but I would at least like the Yankees to pursue Dansby just a little bit. I do like Dansby a lot. He's very frustrating, I know, for a lot of Braves fans, including you, but I
Yes, I
I
absolutely
wouldn't mind seeing him
despised
in New
him
York if
for
it was cheap.
a good 5 years.
Yeah.
It's not going to be because he already turned down. I think he turned down 20, and then we turned down 26. So you're
It's
looking
way
at
too
like the
much.
23, 25 range
I
for
think
him,
it is.
and that's way too much, honestly. Like, if the Braves want to bring him back, he shouldn't be getting paid more than Austin Riley,
Yeah,
who
and
I
that's
believe is
kind of
at
surprising
22
with
or
him being a
23.
Kennesaw boy that he would, turn that down, but I don't know. I mean, I guess he wants to look elsewhere.
All right, I think he just wants to go to the Dodgers
Yeah,
and
as
suck off
most
Freddie a little
players do, I
more.
feel like.
Yeah. But one more we got like two or three more big signings that have happened. Noah Syndergaard goes to the Dodgers, and that was a move that just totally wasn't on my radar. I knew that Syndergaard was a free agent. I expected him to re-sign with Philly. I know he didn't play like an outstanding, but they go to the World Series. He pitched all right. I thought he was going to get his spot back, but
Yeah, that's an
I
interesting
guess
one
LA
too.
would just put up the money.
I'm kind of surprised that he didn't re-sign with Philly with how electric they were this year. But that Dodgers team that he's joining, they are different. Just with talent on paper. I don't know if it'll all come together like Dodgers fans might think it will, but it definitely is a decent pickup for them for sure.
Yeah, and then the last one I want to get into, it came out right before we started recording. Carlos
I'm
Rodon
very
signs with the
excited,
Yankees,
especially with
and
using
I want
Jameson
to hear what you
Taillon
think.
or losing Jameson Taillon. I think it's much needed, and it's typical Yankees fashion. Bring a free agent here for $1 million and then just watch him flop. Hopefully not, but that's what I've done for my entire life. So yeah,
That's fair. I think Carlos Rodon can have a great impact. He's a great pitcher. He was very good in San Fran last year. He was extremely good in Chicago the year before, and I think the Yankees needed this. They need a true second best starter because Rodon and Garrett Cole, and I know I've heard your frustrations with Garrett Cole before, and all Yankees fans, but you got to give him the the benefit of the doubt when it comes to he was the best
yeah.
pitcher on the market. You guys threw that money at him because he deserved it. So I think that Garrett Cole can be a top five pitcher in the league when he plays like it, and maybe if you put a little something on his hands. But I think Carlos Rodon is going to be nothing but great for you guys. You needed a great left-handed starter,
Carlos
and I
might
think
play
Carlos
better than Garrett
Rodon
Cole
is
next year.
100% the best available.
I don't think that's out of the realm. I really don't.
Oh, I like that. No, no, he's been great, and like in San Fran, which is not as much of a hitter friendly ballpark as New York, still he had a great season. I'm just interested to see because look, pitchers often don't look very good in New York because of the short porch. And I think that, people need to take that into account when they talk about Yankees pitchers. Because we talk about it with Rockies pitchers. We always give Rockies pitchers the benefit of the doubt when they give up a bunch of home runs because they play in cores for 81 games a season. But in Yankee Stadium, like
That's
home
Aaron
runs,
Judge.
just kind of like a fly ball is a home run
No, I
if it's
couldn't
hit
agree
to right
more.
field. Yeah.
And that's actually a good point that you just made that I had never thought of before. Is you never hear Yankees pitchers getting the leeway with the short porch at Yankee Stadium, and I mean, I get it. They're the Yankees. They're pretty much the Cowboys of the MLB. Nobody wants to give them any leeway, but it definitely has to be mentioned. I feel.
Yeah, I agree. And I think
I'm
that's
just
going to
happy to
wrap it
be
up
here.
for us.
I
Anything else
can't
you want
wait
to
to
say
be
to the
on more
people, Luke?
episodes. This is going to be very fun. I cannot wait to give you guys more content.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, I think we're going to get out of here. We will see you guys. Well, I will see you guys on Tuesday with Brock, and me and Luke will be back here next Friday.
Deuces.
But we'll catch y'all later.